All we're saying is you can't carry a gun in town.
I have 2 guns, one for each other.
When most people think of the 1993 Western film, Tombstone, they remember its thrilling shootouts, unforgettable one, and legendary performances by Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp and Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday. For years, fans quoted its lines, "I'm your Huckleberry, and you tell him I'm coming, and hell's coming with me," without realizing how close the movie came to falling apart during production. What many viewers never figured out is how much struggle went on behind the cameras, and how actors like Sam Elliott carried a quiet burden throughout the making of the film. Elliot played Virgil Earp, Wyatt's older brother, a role that gave him less spotlight compared to Russell and Kilmer but carried immense emotional weight. His character was the steady hand, the man who believed in law and order even when chaos surrounded the town of Tombstone. Yet, Elliot later revealed that his role could have been much deeper and more powerful if parts of the original script had not been cut. In interviews, Elliot has confessed that almost 30 pages of material were removed, much of it dedicated to side characters and emotional connections, including Virgil's story. This decision left him feeling like parts of the film's heart were missing. However, he stayed committed to the project, believing in the cast and in the movie they were all fighting to complete. His honesty years later gave fans a new way of looking at Tombstone, not just as an action-packed Western, but as a story shaped by hidden struggles and sacrifices that made its final victory even more impressive. The story of Tombstone began with Kevin Jarre, the writer who created the script. Jarre had a bold vision. He wanted to make a Western that felt classic and sweeping, a film that showed not only the famous gunfight at the OK Corral, but also the lives of the families, townspeople, and the lawmen who tried to bring order to chaos. He even wrote scenes that showed small, human moments like Virgil rescuing a child, or the brothers sharing quiet talks about duty and sacrifice. Sam Elliott loved Jarre's script because it gave every character depth, not just Wyatt and Doc. Unfortunately, Jarre was also hired to direct the film, and this is where trouble began. Though brilliant as a writer, Jarre struggled as a first-time director. On set, he preferred wide, sweeping shots that made the film look like older westerns, but this clashed with the fast-paced style that modern audiences expected. The crew began falling behind schedule, and tensions grew quickly. Even the experienced cinematographer, William Fraker, had difficulty working with Jarre because Jarre refused advice. Sam Elliott noticed these problems right away. By the third day of filming, he knew the production was in trouble. He admired Jarre as a writer but worried that the story might be lost if things didn't change. His fears came true when, after about a month of delays, Jarre was fired. For Elliott and the cast, it was heartbreaking. They cared about Jarre's vision and felt like they were losing the captain of their ship. But the studio had no choice. They needed the film finished on time, especially with the Christmas release deadline set by Disney. This change set off a chain of events that reshaped the entire movie. After Kevin Jarre was removed, the studio brought in George P. Cosmatos to direct. On paper, this seemed like a solution, but in practice, it was more complicated. Cosmatos had little time to prepare and walked into a production already filled with stress and tension. The cast and crew didn't fully trust him, and many felt lost without Jarre's guiding vision. This is when Kurt Russell quietly stepped into a leadership role. Russell never officially directed Tombstone, but behind the scenes, he was doing much of the work. He began writing shot lists at night, planning the next day's filming, and handing them to Cosmatos each morning. Russell's effort kept the production moving forward, and many cast members later admitted that without him, the movie might never have been finished. Val Kilmer, who played Doc Holliday, praised Russell's sacrifice, explaining how he gave up sleep and free time to keep the project on track. Sam Elliott also felt the support. Though disappointed that parts of Virgil's story had been cut, Elliott respected Russell for saving the film. He saw that Russell wasn't trying to steal credit but was focused on keeping the cast together and protecting the heart of the story. Still, not everyone was happy. Some actors joked that the finished film became the Kurt and Val show, since their characters received the most attention, while others like Virgil, Earp, and Morgan Earp were pushed to the side. For Elliott, this was bittersweet. He admired the leadership but also knew his character had lost some of the depth originally written. Even so, he stayed loyal, believing that teamwork and commitment mattered more than ego. That decision would later prove vital in shaping the legacy of Tombstone. As Russell and Cosmatos reshaped Tombstone, big changes hit the script. Nearly 30 pages were cut to speed up the pacing and focus more on Wyatt and Doc's relationship. These cuts hurt the ensemble nature of the story. Scenes that showed Virgil's quiet strength, Morgan's family life, and other subplots were left out. Sam Elliott admitted later that if he had known how much would be cut, he might not have accepted the role. Yet, instead of walking away, he chose to fight for his character in small ways. Elliott and a few other actors began slipping lines back into scenes during filming. These small acts of rebellion helped bring their characters to life, even if only in subtle ways. Elliott wanted Virgil to remain more than just a background figure. He played him as a man of principle, a tired lawman who cared about protecting his town. One story illustrates this perfectly. While sitting in a bar one evening, someone told Elliot he should have been cast as Wyatt. Quiet and reflective, simply replied, "Tell me about it," before taking another drink. That moment, like his performance, showed a mix of pride and disappointment. His character may not have had the most lines, but his presence gave the film weight. Other cast members like Michael Biehn and Powers Booth also voiced their concerns about lost material, but everyone pushed forward to finish the film. Despite the tension, the cast stood together, each doing their part to keep Tombstone alive. In the end, their unity created a movie that felt powerful, even if it was not the original vision Jarre had imagined. While the cast was battling creative issues on set, another fight was happening outside the production. Actor Kevin Costner, who was originally considered for Tombstone, decided to make his own version of the Wyatt Earp story. He believed the focus should be only on Wyatt himself, not the ensemble approach that Jarre had written. Costner had a lot of power in Hollywood at the time, and he reportedly tried to block Tombstone from being made. He urged studios not to support it, and even used his connections to take most of the Western costumes available in Hollywood, forcing Tombstone's team to look overseas for period clothing. These challenges could have crushed the film, but instead, they became part of its underdog story. Disney's Buena Vista studio stepped in to distribute it, and the crew found authentic costumes in Europe, which ironically mirrored history, since wealthy townsfolk in Tombstone often imported clothes from Europe as well. Costner eventually released his own movie, Wyatt Earp, but it was long, expensive, and did not connect with audiences in the same way. Meanwhile, Tombstone turned into a surprise success. On a $25 million budget, it earned over $76 million worldwide and became a fan favorite. The rivalry between the two films showed how close Tombstone had come to being buried, and how resilience, teamwork, and a little luck turned it into a classic. For Sam Elliott, this outside rivalry added to the feeling that Tombstone was always fighting against the odds. From losing its director, to script cuts, to competition with one of Hollywood's biggest stars, the movie seemed destined to fail. Yet somehow, it rose above all these obstacles, a fact that made Elliott's later reflections even more emotional. Sam Elliott's role as Virgil Earp may not have been the flashiest, but it gave the movie its moral center. Elliott understood that Virgil was not a man who sought violence, but a man who believed in law, order, and responsibility. Unlike Wyatt or Doc, who were driven by personal stakes and friendship, Virgil acted because he felt it was his duty to protect the town. This made him a quieter, steadier presence, but no less important. Elliott prepared for the role by focusing on Virgil's humanity. He wanted audiences to see a tired man carrying the burden of justice. One small moment in the film highlights this perfectly. Before the famous gunfight, Virgil rescues a child from danger. It's a blink-and-do-miss-it scene, but it shows his true nature. Fans who look back now often credit Elliott for bringing depth to the role, even when the script gave him less material. Scholars and critics later praised his performance, saying his weathered face and calm voice gave the film emotional weight. Elliott himself admitted that he sometimes felt disappointed by how much was cut from Virgil's story, but he also believed that his quiet strength came through anyway. This combination of regret and pride made his later revelations about the film so powerful. He wanted fans to know that there was more to Virgil than what ended up. Years after Tombstone had become a cult classic, Sam Elliott began opening up about his personal experiences during the shoot. In interviews, he described how the project had been both rewarding and frustrating. Rewarding, because it placed him in a beloved Western, alongside talented actors, and cemented his place in cinematic history. Frustrating, because so much of what made Virgil Earp important to the story was cut in the editing process. Elliott recalled that nearly 30 pages of dialogue and character development were removed to keep the film under 2 hours. Among those cuts were scenes that showed Virgil's leadership and family life, which would have given audiences a deeper understanding of who he was beyond the badge and gun. Elliott's honesty struck a chord with fans who later wished for a director's cut of Tombstone that restored these lost moments. While such a cut has never been officially released, the idea continues to circulate in fan communities. Elliott also mentioned how proud he was of Kurt Russell's dedication behind the camera. He admired how Russell put the film above his own comfort and sacrificed personal time to ensure its completion. Looking back, Elliott said he believed Tombstone worked not because it was perfect, but because it was made with passion and grit. That combination of honesty and admiration revealed much about Elliott's character as both an actor and a man, someone willing to acknowledge flaws while still celebrating achievements. One reason Tombstone continues to resonate with fans is the undeniable chemistry among the cast. Behind the scenes, the URP brothers Kurt Russell, Sam Elliott, and Bill Paxton formed a bond that mirrored their on-screen relationship. They often spent time together between shoots, talking about the struggles of playing historical figures while also carrying the pressure of saving a troubled production. Elliott later described how Bill Paxton's youthful energy kept spirits up, even during difficult days, while Russell carried the heavy weight of responsibility. Val Kilmer, despite his character's flamboyant style, was deeply committed to the project and often encouraged his co-stars when morale dipped. This sense of brotherhood was not just acting, it was real. Elliot believed that this bond helped carry the movie through the roughest times, and audiences could feel that authenticity on screen. When Virgil is badly wounded and Wyatt and Doc vow revenge, the emotion feels genuine because the actors were truly invested in one another. Elliot's reflections years later emphasized that despite creative differences and studio pressures, the cast trusted each other. This trust made the story believable and gave Tombstone its lasting emotional punch. Fans today often cite the chemistry between the URPs and Doc Holliday as one of the film's greatest strengths, and Elliot agreed that this bond was the heart of the movie. When Tombstone was released, it did well at the box office, but its true legacy came later as it developed a loyal fanbase. Audiences connected with its sharp dialogue, strong characters, and the sense of grit that felt both modern and classic at the same time. Sam Elliott often expressed surprise at just how deeply fans connected with the movie. Over the years, people approached him at events, in airports, or even on the street, telling him how much Virgil Earp meant to them. Some veterans and law enforcement officers said they saw themselves in Virgil's quiet commitment to duty. Others said the ERP brothers reminded them of their own families, with older siblings carrying the weight of responsibility. Elliot admitted that these encounters moved him, even though he sometimes wished fans could have seen the fuller version of Virgil. The film's quotable lines became part of pop culture, with "I'm your Huckleberry" appearing on t-shirts, mugs, and even tattoos. What fans didn't always know was the amount of pain and struggle that went into making the film they loved. Elliot later said that this fan devotion made the hardships worthwhile. Every time someone told him that Tombstone was their favorite Western, it reminded him that the sacrifices on set had lasting value. In many ways, the fans kept the spirit of the film alive, turning it from a box office success into a cultural legend. Before Tombstone, the Western genre was struggling. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, audiences were losing interest in cowboy stories, and many studios avoided the genre altogether. Tombstone helped change that perception by proving that Westerns could still be exciting and profitable if made with energy and style. It wasn't a slow, dusty drama, it was fast, sharp, and full of memorable characters. Critics noticed that it blended the tradition of classic Westerns with modern pacing, making it appealing to younger viewers who weren't raised on John Wayne or Clint Eastwood. Sam Elliott's performance contributed to that balance. He carried the weight of the Old West tradition with his deep voice and rugged look, while Russell and Kilmer brought a more modern edge. Together, the cast bridged generations of audiences. In film history, Tombstone is often compared to Costner's Wyatt Earp, which was released a year later. Where Costner's film was long, slow, and serious, Tombstone was lean, thrilling, and fun. The comparison only strengthened Tombstone's reputation. Today, it is considered one of the best Westerns of the last 40 years. And its influence can still be seen in later films and television shows that revived interest in the genre. Elliot often reflected with pride that he got to be part of that turning point. In the end, what makes Tombstone special is not only what appears on the screen but also the story behind how it was made. Sam Elliott's later revelations gave fans a glimpse of the sacrifices that went into creating the film, from Kevin Jarre's original vision to his heartbreaking removal. To Kurt Russell's behind-the-scenes leadership, every stage of the production was marked by struggle. Elliott's own journey mirrored Virgil Earp's, steady, reliable, and willing to carry the weight even when recognition was limited. The movie's survival depended on teamwork, loyalty, and commitment from everyone involved. That story resonates with fans because it reflects real life. Success often comes not from perfection, but from pushing through challenges together. Elliot believed this was the true lesson of Tombstone. It wasn't just a story about lawmen versus outlaws, it was a story about resilience, brotherhood, and sacrifice, both on and off the screen. As fans continue to watch and rewatch the film decades later, they are not only enjoying an entertaining Western but also celebrating the legacy of the people who fought to make it possible. Elliott's honesty